How do women survive in the most brutal prisons in the world? What castes and peculiarities exist there?
I'm Knox, and today I'll tell you about the toughest female colonies and what it's like to be there.
But don't rush to pity all these girls, because they don't end up there for no reason. In the end, I'll tell you about a prisoner who tried to kill her child, skinned her husband, and served it all up with vegetables. And let's start with Russia. Women's corrective colony number 32 is located on the outskirts of the city of Perm. A very harsh and gloomy place where only female recidivists end up. The contingent here is quite diverse, from petty thieves to girls who have committed murder. How do their days go by? Most of the time, the convicts are at work. The local sewing factory where they work sews equipment for the emergencies ministry, police, and fulfills other government orders. Ironically, isn't it, in the middle there is a huge empty courtyard with several flower beds. You can understand that strolling around is not customary here. Women move only in groups, at least 2 at a time. Their heads are always covered with scarves. Self-expression in this place is prohibited. Motivational slogans are hung on the walls of the institution, and laundry hangs in ropes along the buildings to dry. Peach curtains hang on the windows, and there are several pots of flowers on the floor. All beds, standing in neat rows, are neatly made and have the same colors. A lacquered photograph with the name of the inmate hangs on each bed. Complete uniformity and absolute cleanliness. There is no chaos like in men's prison. Women resist the prison system less and strictly follow the regulations. And they don't have much choice, because if carelessness of one will be answered for by the whole squad. The inmates have the same dress code, dark green clothing, and a headscarf. Their daily routine includes waking up at 6 a.m., breakfast, work, lunch break, dinner, and lights out at 10 p.m. The average salary ranges from $2 to $4 a day, and this money can be spent in the camp store. Well, not much. Unlike men, women are not shaved bald, but they are forbidden to change their hairstyle and hair color without coordination with the administration. What about violence in the colony? Although the administration rejects all accusations, this place is rightly considered one of the toughest in Russia. Humiliation, suicides, and constant moral pressure through visits and restrictions, not to mention interpersonal relationships among the inmates. By the way, what castes exist in female colonies?
And here I'd like to clarify one point right away. There is no rigid hierarchy in women's correctional institutions like in men's zones. The structure here is simpler.
Each squad and cell have their seniors or overseers who are the most authoritative and have been in the institution for a long time. However, the selection of seniors is done with the consent of the prison administration, and their main task is to maintain order, cleanliness, and discipline in the cell, as well as to resolve conflicts. How? It all depends on the administration. If they turn a blind eye to violence, the methods of influence can be very cruel, from beatings to assault and violence using various objects. Yes, this also happens in women's colonies. There are, of course, more professional inmates serving multiple sentences. They enjoy some respect and influence over others, but not like in men's zones. These girls are rather feared, but everything is decided by the administration. The scheme works almost everywhere. There are no roosters in women's zones, but women can form pairs for interactions where one is the active partner and the other is the passive lover. Only stinkers are despised here. Girls who don't want to take care of themselves in prison simply don't wash and don't observe personal hygiene. But I think it's the same in any group. The foul smell repels everyone. Some girls form groups called families, where they support each other and manage household chores together. A separate category is the inmates who provide services to the administration for privileges or perks, as most of the staff in the colonies are men. If you want to eat well and make phone calls, you need to know how to maneuver. What articles generate the greatest contempt? Killing their own children, especially newborns. And I fully understand why there's such disgust.
By the way, since I started talking about children, did you know that there are mothers with babies in prisons?
In women's correctional institutions where a system of open child houses, there are full-fledged maternity wards for pregnant women serving sentences in the colony. After all, no one cancels dates with men, and sometimes even the colony staff can provide help. The creation of such departments is aimed at providing medical care to pregnant women and providing conditions for the normal development and living of children born in these conditions. A convicted mother has the right to communicate with her child in her free time from work, as well as to live with him or her. After the child turns 3, he or she can be handed over to relatives or other persons with the mother's consent. Otherwise, they will be sent to a state child institution. A convicted mother is granted a short leave of 15 days without counting the travel time to arrange for her baby. In addition, the colony administration provides the mother with an annual leave of the same duration for visits with the child. If a convicted mother has less than a year left to serve her sentence, her 3-year-old child can stay in the child's house until the mother is released, provided the mother behaves impeccably. But not everyone is so rosy.
Women's Correctional Institution number 21 in Tashkent is known worldwide for its harsh treatment of inmates.
In fact, it is the only female colony in Uzbekistan where women with serious crimes are imprisoned. Initially, it may seem that not everything is so bad. In the library, inmates have access to more than 9,000 books, and 80% of the inmates are regular library members. Families of inmates have the opportunity to meet with them for long and short periods, depending on the degree of relationship. For example, parents, spouses, and children can meet with inmates for up to 3 days, while other relatives can meet for 2 hours. Inmates have the right to bring their children to the colony if the children are under 3 years old. In the children's home where the children of inmates are located, pediatricians, psychologists, and educators work. They can see their children twice a day for 2 hours. After 3 years, children can be handed over to close relatives or sent to an orphanage. In the production zone, inmates engage in sewing, decorating porcelain dishes, knitting socks, and other types of work from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And even labor is paid depending on the volume of work done, from $20 to $60 per month. It's like a pioneer camp, not a colony, but in reality, according to women, violence and cruelty reign here. Women are humiliated, broken, forced to give money and serve the administration in many ways. In case of disobedience, they are beaten by other inmates. Strange suicides often occur, but as soon as an inspection or a film crew arrives, everything stops immediately. But it's not only in the CIS that everything is so severe. The maximum security prison Valley State in California easily surpasses the rest. But the contingent here corresponds. Convicts serving long sentences, life imprisonment, or the death penalty. Reports from journalists and human rights activists who have visited this prison testify to the extreme aggression of the inmates, which leads to frequent clashes and fights among women. The prison administration also complains about the high level of aggression among the inmates but cannot do anything within the legal framework. Fights often end in serious injuries or even death, as women deliberately use sharp objects to inflict bodily harm on each other, including cutting faces to disfigure the victim. Prison guards also note that violence and assault using makeshift items often occurs inside the prison. This indicates that even in women's prisons, there is also a problem of assault and violence. Despite Western prisons striving for rehabilitation and correction of inmates, the release statistics from Valley State Prison show a high rate of recidivism, with almost every other person returning. This indicates that the correctional facility model may be ineffective in preventing repeat offenses.
If there's a place where hellish torments become a reality, it's undoubtedly the African prison Mpimba in Burundi.
The name African prison itself raises alarm, but reality has surpassed the most dreadful expectations. Mpimba is not just a female or male colony. Here, all boundaries separating genders are fundamentally violated, and the only thing between them is a thin wall. Beatings and torture are commonplace, but the administration of this dreadful colony has come up with something even more disgusting. Holes in the partition wall so male inmates can relieve their stress with female inmates who are forced to endure this under the threat of cruel punishment. Even the prison guards themselves do not hesitate to use this repulsive innovation. The result of such an absurd system is very alarming. Children are born and die within the walls of this place of hell, while their mothers suffer from HIV and violence. Add to this the terrible hygienic conditions, lack of medical assistance, and impunity of the administration, and you'll understand why Mpimba rightfully becomes the leader in the ranking of hellish prisons. But let's move to the other side of the world, to Australia. In Silverwater Prison, known as Mulawa, an atmosphere of strictness and fear reigns. This is a place where women with the darkest past end up. The Corrective Center, which houses about 220 female inmates, is one of the most severe in Australia. Here are women whose names have become known throughout the country due to their horrific crimes. Among them are murderers, cannibals, child abusers. I'll tell you about the most terrifying lady from this place later. Silverwater Prison is located west of the Central Business District of Sydney in New South Wales. Its walls welcome women from all corners of the country every day, arriving on prison trucks from various states. The prison administration strictly monitors order and safety. To understand the severity of the place, here's an example. Every incoming prisoner undergoes a check for drugs or other prohibited items inside their body. Women suspected of smuggling something are left in an empty gray room without a toilet or sink for several days so that the contents of their stomach cannot be hidden.
Violence and cruelty are also not uncommon here, but the contingent matches.
Meet Кейт Найт, a typical inmate of Sилverwater. What did she do? On February 29, 2000, Catherine Knight suddenly turned her life and her husband John Price's life into a nightmare. Knight inexplicably attacked Price with a knife, inflicting 37 wounds on him. Price's attempts to escape were futile, and he died from injuries. But that was just the beginning of the horrifying story. Knight, with her experience working in an abattoir, used her skills to dismember Price's body. She decapitated him, skinned him, and dismembered his body just as she did with animals in the abattoir. After that, Knight prepared a meal using parts of Price's body. She cooked Price's head in a pot on the stove and baked the remaining pieces of meat in the oven. The meal was served with vegetables and gravy as if nothing had happened. The horror of the story is so striking that it's hard to believe in such human brutality. Knight was found in a helpless state, trying to commit suicide after committing the murder. But fortunately, she was apprehended and medical assistance was provided to her. But it turned out that this case was not isolated. Catherine Knight's relationship history with her first husband, David Kellett, was also questionable. From the very beginning of their marriage, Knight subjected Kellett to violence. Even on their wedding night, she beat him and attempted to strangle him, supposedly because he fell asleep. One of the most horrific incidents involving Knight was when witnesses saw her pushing a newborn son through the town in a stroller and deliberately ramming the stroller into the fences lining the streets. Even more horrifyingly, she then placed the child on the railway tracks, attempting to end his life. The child was saved by a local resident, and Knight was admitted to a psychiatric hospital for postpartum depression.
As you can understand, people don't end up in prisons just like that. While some of them are awful, the contingent can be no better. So, it's better to not end up there, but to join our team. If you can write interesting stories, edit or voice videos, then write to our Telegram bot via the link in the description, and thanks for watching.